hope and faith can go hand in hand, but faith and religion aren't the same thing.
What happens when a Christian, an atheist, and an astrologer walk into a bar? It's no joke.
I don't understand from the atheist point of view how you arrive at you're enjoying goodness when you don't believe there's a God who is good.
If there is a God, he's been pretty cruel at times.
It's the start of a real conversation.
And the past life healing and the numerology and the cardology and the Reiki and the tarot and the crystals. It's all been this journey of healing.
I'd hate for you to believe that things in your life has happened because of karma.
3 ways of seeing the world, 1 bar, and all the questions that connect us.
I'm Theo Johnson, and this is who's walking in my bar today. So today we're going to talk about love and suffering. Tell me what love means to you.
It's a big word, isn't it? I go straight back to my GCSE, and the Greeks have 7 words for love. And so when you ask love, it's like, are we talking about friendship and kindness? Or are we talking about self-sacrifice and putting other people first? I'm not sure. All of it.
Mm-hmm. I think self-sacrifice is a great description of something that gets you love. I think the question we often ask ourselves is, what's the purpose of being a human? And maybe there isn't one, but I think if there is, it is love. It's to have relationships, and it's to feel the comfort of other human beings. We are pack animals, and I think we experience that pack instinct through love in its healthiest way.
I think, the self-sacrificing must be the highest form of love, like depending on whatever relationship you're looking at, whether it's friends, and you think, I left my blooming raincoat home on the way here today. And if someone said, oh, do you know what? Take my raincoat, I'll get wet, you stay dry for the rest of the day. Not because you've got anything going on, but just because I don't want you to be all soggy and wet. That's a form of sacrifice, isn't it? So I do think, sacrifice has some edge to it where you're like, oh, I feel really loved by that person because they have taken a hit for me. And I think, as a Christian, that's the framework of Jesus, that he would come and sacrifice for someone like me.
So Swarzy, you mentioned being a Christian. Could you tell us what that means to you?
When I was in year 8, I got caught shoplifting. And you know how the boss man catch me as well? He caught me because I left it, literally, I had the t-shirt under my uniform. I thought, I'm gonna breeze out here. The shopman was like, the hanger in the changing room. I was like, rookie mistake, Swaz, rookie mistake. So he made all of the other people leave the shop and was like, this girl is stealing out of my mouth. Like, she's definitely, I'm calling the police. And I thought, my mum is from the Caribbean, bro. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm absolutely done. But I remember the shame of everyone walking past. And I stood there in the shop, and obviously the door is closed. He's on the phone to the police, and my mum is thinking, and I said, God, if you're real, get me out of this situation. I'll never shoplift again, and I'll follow you. That's obviously a very churchy prayer for someone who never really went to church outside of Christmas carol services. And without a doubt, as soon as I said amen, he put down the phone to the police, opened the door and just said, just go. And I was like, maybe there is a God. And then a friend at school, shouted out to Lissy. Lissy's mum used to go to a church in Ilford. By Friday night, there was a youth service, and all of these young people were coming to the front. And they said, actually, for those who know they've done something wrong, if you put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ, who takes all of that on a cross, he died, he rose again, you don't have to carry all that baggage, all that shame. And from that moment, I was like, maybe there isn't a way out of this. I don't want to carry all the guilt and the shame of that. And so, I didn't think I had a moment of, I became a Christian. I had loads of questions. But I think in that moment, I was like, oh, God definitely heard me. Because who else was to know that I was in Miss Selfridge's on the high street? No one would have known that. Only the Lord would have known that.
And I don't know anyone else that's found God in Miss Selfridge.
Yeah, exactly. He comes and finds you in the wildest places, bro.
That's amazing. Francesca, you study astrology?
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about that?
Oh, wow. So astrology is the study of the sky. So we know that the moon affects tides. And so when astrology takes it that next step. So if the moon affects tides, why would it stop with the moon? We've got Mercury, Venus, Mars, so all the other planets, it's just nature. It's nature expanded. It's the understanding that those planets impact things that happen to us, the way we feel, the way we behave, the way we look.
Brilliant. And Benjamin, you identify as...
I believe in none of it.
Yeah, an atheist, yeah.
I actually, by sheer coincidence, have quite a few friends who are active Christians, and I see the benefits that they get personally from it. And I often say to them, I wish I could be a Christian or a Muslim. I wish I could believe, because I see the values that you take from it, but I simply don't think it's real. There's no evidence it's real. It doesn't make any sense. And I think that while God is definitely not real, and organized religion isn't real, and sometimes it can be quite abusive, faith and human interaction and care is real. And I think you can have those same values that Christians can have without believing in a particular book or
Could
a
I ask
particular description.
where the certainty comes from? So you said God is definitely not real.
I'm hedging my bets.
A lot of people say they don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of atheists say they don't believe because it hasn't been proven. But you're saying it's definitely not real.
Cool, because we can explain a great many things in the world through evolution and through science. It is quite evidently true. And the things we can't explain, we can rationalize. But the idea that there is someone in the sky that has designed everything is quite blatantly not true. It doesn't make any sense. And so, I think the rational conclusion is to accept that.
What are your thoughts on that, Swarzy?
I think I know it to be true because I know what I experienced in that shop. And I know the pain of being exposed and the grace of like, oh my gosh, I didn't deserve for that shopkeeper to say, go. So when you're like, oh, there's not a God in the sky, actually, he became human. And so what I loved about it was like, okay, well, if I want to get to know God, there is someone who is saying he is God. What does he have to say? And if someone really did die and rise again, then my life has to be like, what's he got to say? And the fact that people would give up all of their lives, they saw something worth following him right to the end of being boiled alive or crucified upside down. But even astrology-wise, when it says he died and the sky went dark.
Eclipse.
There is also science, I believe, to say on that day, they dated it to the day he died and all of it went dark. So I don't ever see something as like, I just find that truth being later found out is always true. Whether or not we find it out today or tomorrow or in eternity, it'll always be true.
So Francesca, would you see that as just an eclipse, a coincidence that it happened?
I'm all for it. We work a lot with Christ in Christ codes, and he talks about the eclipse, this eclipse, and the sky went dark, and they pierced Jesus' side, and all of that is historical, and how we can work with that as faith. Astrologically it makes sense. Astrology is just as part of it, in the same way that the three kings, they're following a star. That was astrology, and a lot of religions began with astrology. I understand the Christian experience. I was raised Catholic. I am Catholic. Although they probably wouldn't have me as an astrologer, because sometimes the priests are not so into it. But all the religions, it's the great mystery, isn't it? That ultimately there's love, but we humanize things, and we do have culture, and we do change the shape of faith and religion according to culture. And then when humans get involved, they start corrupting things. But when you strip back, I think faith and religion and ritual and sort of honoring energy, they are all working towards the same God. He's just multilingual.
The reason why there is lots of commonality, whatever culture and period of history, you're likely to come to the similar conclusions as you've just described, is because it's human nature. As beings, we wonder why we're here, we wonder what the purpose is, and we seek love. That is inherent in us. We're relational beings. And so the reason why I think you have such a plethora of religions, which are wildly different, it's because people seek purpose and they seek connection. Now, the thing I would say is that you described about how good things happening and the responsibility to do good. I subscribe to karma. I'm conscious that if I see a £10 note on the pavement, I won't pick it up. If I find a wallet, I'll give it back, because I worry that if I do something bad will happen to me. But there is a danger in that, though, that can be quite oppressive to yourself. And I think religion can often be like that. It can feel like if something's gone wrong, then someone's done it to you. And I think that's quite unhealthy.
When you say you subscribe to karma,
I suppose what I mean is I see it as a moral code that, I like people to treat me well, so I try to treat other people well.
Okay.
But there's a danger in this, and this is one of my problems with religion, is that sometimes bad things happen, and it is poor luck. It is a consequence of events outside of your control. And so people often like to say they believe in God because they got a job they needed, or some money turned up, a loved one got better when they were sick. But actually, there are so many more situations in the world where things go hideously wrong.
Absolutely.
And how does it explain that? Because then if there is a God, he's being pretty cruel at times.
Swarzy.
Yeah, I think you make such a good point, you know. How do you reconcile there being a good God and yet bad things go wrong? And I think people just paint Christians as like, la, we just get our jobs. And no, Christians get cancer the same way anyone else gets cancer. Christians lose loved ones the same way. And we live in a world that is obviously not the way God intended for it. So I think for the Christian, there's a promise that says that God works all things together for our good. So when bad things happen, there's a real purpose there to think, all right, this thing is awful, but you're absolutely right to say the world does not work perfect for people who don't believe in God and then work unperfect for those who do, or vice versa. Well, I love what you said about, you know, I wish I could believe, because I think if I wasn't a Christian, some of the horrible things that have happened in my life, I don't know how I would have got past those things without knowing God is working that for my good.
When you described that story of how you found God, because when you said amen, the shopkeeper put the phone down and let you go.
Yeah.
Dare I say it, well, obviously, in my view, it wasn't God, but what that shopkeeper with a 13-year-old stealing a top or whatever,
Yeah.
the reason they would have been doing that is because they wanted you to learn a lesson, and they would have seen you learn that lesson in your reaction, and that's why he may well have thought, you know, I've got the item back and she seems to be taking responsibility.
Yeah.
That was a human experience between two beings of them feeling like the other one was treating them with respect, which you hadn't when you walked into the shop.
Yeah, you might be affording this brother more grace than me, bro, because this guy looks visibly angry. See, that's the thing about faith, isn't it? I don't know what caused his heart to change in that moment, and yet God in his kindness jumped in and intervened.
So, Francesca, does love resolve pain?
The best thing I've found over the years is going to yoga and getting in the zone and getting back to this peace, to the whatever it is, whether it's God, lying back and being, I am the space between my thoughts, you know, the overthinking, because if you can get past the mind, then you just get to this love.
Yeah.
So everything that's in between you and love is, I guess, the problem or the pain. It's also as well with astrology is so helpful because my dog died when I was 11.
Yeah.
And my best friend left and a few things happened. I basically just lost my mind. I was very, very depressed. I kept going to the doctor every day. I was at the school nurse, like, help me, because nobody could help me. Like, my parents couldn't help. Nobody knew what was wrong with me. I was just really
Deep grief.
deeply unhappy, deep. And it was, nobody understood. And fast forward, I'm 30, I become an astrologer. And you get all your transits, because you have your birth chart and then the planets are moving all the time, you know, like all the time. The moon's always moving. And you get back all these dates of times when bad things happen or big things happen or transits happen. And I went and looked back all these difficult times. And one of them, I went straight back to that and I was like, unbelievable. And then to now be able to see that in the chart and also to be able to see, okay, this is a very difficult time, but it will pass. And to be able to help people and explain, I find astrology very healing because I can understand what is going on and what we are being taught or what experience we are going through.
So you would say everything's already written and already preordained?
Well, to an extent. Some astrologers say character is fate. You know, it is what it is, but then what do we do with it? And that's why you see an astrologer, because I do my own astrology. You can see certain transits, so you try and do the transit so it doesn't do you.
Benjamin, do you let love get you through painful times?
Well, I think pain is the price we pay for love. You know, there's a reason why emotional pain is so acute and why it shapes us. And that's because I think it probably is a form of love. When you lose someone, the pain is so acute because the love was so acute. You know, my dad died last week, and my dad wasn't a very nice person. He was a heroin addict. And so there was a great deal of suffering there. And yet there was still the love, because I knew that underneath that suffering, there was a deep, unbreakable emotional connection that a father and a child has. And so I think so often those things are intertwined and hard to unravel. And sometimes it's the difficulty to explain or to express that love, such as for him as an addict of 40 years, that can cause so much pain. I think a lot of his pain and mine as a child was the inability to have that relationship. And so that's why I think pain is so potent, because it is a form of love.
So sorry that you've lost your dad only a week ago. As a Christian, death is awful. And I think the Christian cannot say that there's any two ways about it. Death is not part of the plan. It's not, things are not meant to decay. And so I think, you know, when Jesus died and he rose again, he defeated death. When I found out who God was, and I looked at the person of Jesus and what he said and how he, you know, how he loved people, that the religious people actually said to Jesus, "What are you doing eating with scum? Like, you can't be eating with tax collectors and prostitutes." And you know, if you're so
Well,
good,
tax collectors, I understand.
yeah, well, exactly. But even your point of like, even though your dad, like you said, was not the nicest man, like that for me has blessed me so much, Benjamin, in the sense of you have loved your dad, even though he didn't deserve your love if he wasn't the nicest of man. But because he's your dad, you love him nonetheless. And I think that's helped me, even in this time and space, to be like, oh, if people are capable of doing that, how much more then is God capable of doing that?
But I think this stuff is quite obviously explained by evolution and our survival as a human species, because one thing that singles us out, or maybe singles mammals out, is that we need relations. It's in our own interests to support other people, to continue the species, to have children, to care about others. The fact that we feel that love and that connection is why we've survived as a species to be so powerful. I think that is a very rational evolutionary explanation. But when people, for example, say that God is love, well, that makes a lot of sense to me, because we need love. I think it's understandable to seek God, but what you're seeking is an explanation, a way to rationalize, a way to explain these events. But I don't think that means that God exists. It means the need for an explanation exists.
I got married not too long ago, and my dad's other half at the time left him on my wedding day. Oh. I know. Who saw that one coming? And so, of course, that really, I think I was a bit depressed, to be honest, and I didn't really have the language for it, but I think it sent me in such a place of like, I'm so sad that my dad was robbed of something on the day that should have been really lovely, really joyful, and obviously my family were great, they didn't tell me at the time, but the next day, and then from getting married, we spent a long time like trying to get my dad out of that relationship, moving back to London, and it's just very, very messy, but no one came in to say, it's all gonna be all right, Swaz, or God loves you. Like, those things are true. But you know what friends did? They just sat and wept with me. They just sat and cried, because that is a sad thing to happen. And even I'm in therapy now, and she was like, you know, I thought therapy was so, she was like, that's a sad thing to happen. And that validation was almost enough. And I don't think for Christians, there is an easy way out of the hard stuff life brings to you. There is space to grieve and to weep and to be sad about stuff. My worldview is that God is love and he's compassionate, he's slow to anger, and he abounds in love. His core character is love. And so he's made things, like you said, all to be loved, but the free will is sometimes we reject that. And when you reject life, you get death. You get loads of things that go the opposite way as the way God intended for it to be. And so when those things then trickle down into your life, the Christian has hope that even though life is difficult and tricky and sad, God will use all of that for my good. And if you don't believe in God, you don't really have the hope to say, because I'm God's child, that will work itself out for my benefit. How do you square those things? If we don't know what good is and we have evil, well, we've got nothing to compare it to. We only know justice because we feel the pain of unjust.
Do you feel like it's baked in human nature to have suffering?
It's a really good question, actually. And it brings me back, even before he died, something I often thought about my dad, because he was quite monstrous for much of the time, the grip of addiction and appalling behaviours. One of my first memories is being 5 years old and the council house we lived in being raided by police. And I remember being questioned by the police officer. And that's a pivotal moment in my life. And I remember at 5 years old, making mental decision that I knew that was wrong and that I knew I wasn't like that and I was going to lead my life in a different way. And from a very young age, I was an outsider to my family and at school because I knew I was just fundamentally made a different decision to the environment I grew up in. So I don't know if this is an answer to the question, but I do believe that you know innately good and bad because I had to experience that as a young child. People that grow up in obscene environments can still work out that they're obscene.
Just to jump in, I don't believe in karma, and I want to just encourage you that you have done nothing wrong to inherit a monstrous dad. Because to believe karma is to think, oh, you've done something wrong, and so the justice is you are now going to get what you just get this. This is your luck. I'd hate for you to believe that things in your life has happened because of karma. And as a Christian, I just want to encourage you, I don't believe that's true of your life.
The only thing I'd say is that I think the sort of discipline and humility that growing up with such acute problems brought me is one of the reasons why I think my adult life has been very privileged and in some ways easier. I've been given a lot of opportunities. I've been heavily rewarded. And I think that came from the discipline of having to grow up in an environment like that.
Well, that's good for suffering then. We have to say that there is good that comes out of the suffering because it creates skills in you that you wouldn't otherwise have if you didn't go through certain...
If you respond to suffering well, but I think did your dad suffer? You know what?
Yeah.
Because that's what... There is an element of character.
Yeah.
Where some people have terrible experiences and go, I'm not going to be like that. And some people go, oh, I'm like this because I had a terrible childhood. And there is character that, and maybe God as well, inspiring you to make those choices.
What does your faith look like to you?
My faith is so broad. You know, this year I was in India, I was in an ashram for 2-3 weeks, and there was a guru there. But I definitely went to India this year because I wanted change, and there were things in my spirit, in my things I was experiencing that just weren't changing, weren't moving. A big part of my astrology journey has been to understand, you know, why I couldn't meet someone and have a settled relationship. Why didn't it work for me? It didn't work for all my friends. I get to 30 and everything keeps breaking down, and it's like, okay, I want to understand relationships. And then throughout that, there's been the past life healing and the numerology and the cardology and the Reiki and the tarot and the crystals and, you know, the homeopathy and then the herbal medicine. It's all been this journey of healing and understanding how do we feel that...
What's homeopathy?
Oh, homeopathy it's natural healing. Dr. Emoto is this Japanese dude who had lots of water and spoke to it. And so you said, I hate you or I love you and all these things. And then they freeze the water and the crystals either look happy or they look sad. So it's the idea that water holds memory or molecules hold memory. So homeopathy is a little bit of like a bird or a rock or a mineral. There's a homeopathic remedy called Berlin Wall that gets a lot of stick, but it is really, really powerful because it's literally the Berlin Wall put in some water, shaken up. And don't quote me on this because I'm not a professional, but I'm just very into it.
Yeah.
And then it holds the energy of what must it have been like growing up in Germany, in East Germany, with the Berlin Wall, and then you take it for oppression, suppression, depression, and repression. They're the key motifs, and it helps you. So it's just like treats like, basically. Just take little sugar pills with basically nothing but energy, and it heals.
Benjamin, what's your thoughts on what Francesca just said?
Well, I mean, many parts of it are science. So, you know, there is an experiment where they planted a seed in 2 pots and they played Hitler speeches to one and they played classical music to the other, and the one with the classical music grew faster and stronger. We absorb energy. That is not some abstract idea, that is scientifically proven. You know, every time we speak, the reason we can hear each other is because of the vibrations. And so I think there's definitely a truth to that. Why is it that exists? Well, it's evolution of thousands of years, and human beings have been doing that the answers to a lot of our questions are in each other or in our planet.
Your thoughts?
I think it blew my mind. I think it is a lot. It really struck me, actually. Just as you were saying, you know, they speak to the water, and they say, oh, you're bad, or you're angry, or... And I think to believe that God is a loving father, he is a good God. He would never speak to me the way that that person may speak to water. That's a great comfort to be a Christian, to know that my Father is always going to speak well of me. He's going to sing over me. He's going to love me.
But here's the thing, right? You seem well adjusted and your interpretation of religion is about love and it's appropriate for the time and culture we live in. But how do you explain then the women that are beaten by the husbands, for example, or vice versa, that don't get that moment that gets them out of it, that something doesn't happen that escapes them from it? Because that's my problem. People use it for the good, but actually there are infinite more examples, especially in other parts of the world, where that opportunity doesn't come.
I'm curious to know, how do you have good and bad if you don't believe in anything? If you don't believe in God, how?
Because good and bad is human. Because that's because we are relational beings, and therefore we have a sense of good and bad. I think that is innate because we know how we need to be treated to survive.
I don't understand from the atheist point of view how you arrive at you're enjoying goodness when you don't believe there's a God who is good. Because if it's just going to come from whatever you believe it's come from, how do you know that is a good starting place?
It is in our nature to be relational and to have a survival instinct. And our survival instinct is about what lets us continue. And that is looking after each other, looking after ourselves, having relationships. Those are human evolutionary behaviors. What you're doing is trying to explain it and maybe make those questions easier by saying there's something up there that's doing it. But actually, they are learned behaviors over thousands, maybe millions of years that we have developed as beings.
I think from an astrology perspective, one of these relationship astrology books I read was by Liz Green, who's a therapist, psychologist, and an astrologer, is the idea that if women who end up with one in an abusive relationship and then they leave it and then they marry another one and they keep ending up in the same situation, it's a part of their self that they're not expressing. So they would say it's if a woman with a very strong Mars, so perhaps she was told when she was a child she was too much, she was too boisterous, she was too feisty, so she suppresses it, then you get other people to do it for you. So I would suggest in that instance that there is a part of herself, that will wake up eventually and start standing up. But it's the universe saying, "Oi, stand up for yourself." You get other people to do the energy for you if you're not doing it yourself. And eventually a transit will come that's why after 20 years of abuse, does a woman suddenly go, "I'm off"? And that would be a moment of inspiration, a moment of spirit where they have experienced all they need to experience and then move.
But I don't think it's that abstract because people tend to find what they're looking for. It's why we talk about manifesting dreams, right? The reason those career goals, for example, come true is because you're thinking along those lines all the time, and eventually you will find the thing that will help you take the step. Someone in that situation who's been abused for 20 years will eventually find it because they're looking for it. That is a human, rational survival instinct.
But why in that moment?
Well, because it takes time. The point is eventually it happens because if you look for it long enough, there's some luck you'll find it.
There are some people who feel like they live in a hell now. But to say that God is not there or not present, the Bible says he's close to the brokenhearted, he's close to those who are suffering. He doesn't turn a blind eye, he's absolutely there. But there is also a responsibility that humans have to say, yeah, we are capable of horrible, horrible, horrible atrocities, and so there is going to come a day where there's going to be a judgment on that.
I keep thinking suffering is when we don't accept the situation we're in. Mm-hmm. If you accept it, maybe you're in physical pain, but you accept it, are you suffering? And when I can see images in my head of the news basically and all these terrible things that we see, and I think maybe there is an acceptance and hope and faith and trust that, again, even when I was in India, there were so many people living on the streets with nothing, but there's less between them and God. There's less between them and hope and faith because they've not packed their lives with other things. And so, yeah, I guess hope is the bridge. But if you're in emotional pain, if you're in a war-torn country, are you suffering the whole time? Or are you finding joy in the moments and accepting your reality and praying and hoping with faith that it will change?
Benjamin, do you feel like we could have love without hope?
Well, I would say that hope is human. We find it often the hope in those scenarios has come from other human beings. One thing I'd say in your description of people that live in sort of long-term suffering, inescapable, like being in a war zone, is that something about the human species is that we can have our stress levels rise in the medium or long term, and we basically don't notice. That's our survival instinct. So people that live in what we would find to be awful situations will survive because human beings are incredibly malleable and we adjust very easily. Many other species on Earth do not behave like that. Now that makes total sense when you realize our entire being is to try and find a way to survive. I think you find love in hope. And often you see I've been to lots of war-torn countries like Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan, and those people can be more content than people living in London with good salaries and comforts, because actually those aren't the things that bring us comfort and hope. It's often relationships. And I don't think any of us believe that Elon Musk, with the most money in the world, is happier than someone with a wife and 2 kids that has a content life, because it's relationships that bring us hope.
Relationships brings a lot of stress as well.
Oh, I don't know about yours. I think hope is also a survival instinct, because otherwise people wouldn't be able to get through the worst moments because they have to believe in their own survival. But this is my central point, that is about why we've existed for thousands of years as a species, because our central motivation is to survive. We survive even when we have miserable lives. My dad was a heroin addict, as I understand it, from being a late teenager. And yet he survived because that is how we exist, to try and maintain our lives. And I dare say, if there were a God, why would he create human beings that want to keep going in abject suffering?
I think hope for me as a Christian is not, it may or may not happen. The Bible talks about hope as something, an assurance. You're hoping for something that will happen. The problem also is, like, even though I've got through the suffering, what happens to the person who caused the suffering? Where's the justice in it? And I think that's where hope comes in. For the Christian, you're like, okay, I believe in heaven. I believe that Jesus is going to come back and there's going to be a judgment day where everything will be exposed. And I don't need to know it all this side of eternity. I can rest assured that there will be a day where all tears will be wiped, there'll be no more death, there'll be no more sickness, there'll be no more abuse, there'll be no more war. And that's a great hope to have, not because it may or may not happen, but because I'm certain it's going to happen. And that hope pushes you through, but also it's dealt with. That horrible, horrible abuser, water, or whatever it is, there's some way for that to go. So I think in asking about hope and suffering, we have to ask about justice, because otherwise people get away with things, and God is not going to allow things to get away with. Everything will come to
It'll be forgiven though, won't it? So do you believe in life after death?
Yeah, so in heaven, all things will be made good. There'll be no more, there'll be no more death. There'll be no more, we won't ever get sick. We will be in the world that is intended to be. There'll be joy and laughter and all the things that you can possibly think on this side that spoil. There'll be no more spoil. Probably that's the best way of describing heaven. But to not be in heaven is to be away from all of those things that don't bring joy, don't bring laughter, don't bring any of that, because here now we have the choice.
But I think heaven is human. Well, when someone falls in love and feels safe and secure and is able to laugh and is able to feed themselves, those are the heavenly moments of life. It exists while we're here. I don't think it's an abstract thing that someone else gifts you from above.
Francesca, so if we don't have hope, can we have faith?
It's a big question, Theo. It's hard. Like, if I sit and think, right, I've got no faith. Can I be hopeful? Yeah, I think, because you can want and believe and hope that things will go the way you want without saying prayers, because loads of people do.
What's the difference between hope, faith, religion?
My answer would be that, of course, hope and faith can go hand in hand, but faith and religion aren't the same thing.
Yeah.
Many people have faith. They have faith in their moral code, they have faith in other people, they have faith in themselves, but that's not the same as accepting a particular organized religion and certain practices of exhibiting that faith. And so that's why I think a lot of what we describe is our human instincts, is the explanations we need about the peculiarity of life. But those things are in the faith of other people, not in whether you subscribe to a particular text.
But miracles, you know, I think miracles are a big one, and then faith and where you're going from, not from A to B, but from A to C, where prayers have been answered, and that your hope and your faith has amazed you a bit, maybe like your Christian awakening story is. There was this moment, and the energy was like this, and it was all she was being criticized and felt, oh, this is going a bad way. Energetically, you change something. So from a scientific-ish perspective, she goes, okay, look, here I am being guilty, but I'm saying, I'm giving off hope, I'm giving off faith, I'm praying that something could be different. And then there's the prayer side, where the prayer is answered, and instead of going from A to B, there's been something that feels like divine intervention. And I think you can have hope without faith, but is it the same hope? I don't know.
But the fact you come to those conclusions are a product of behaviours. So, if a mum can't feed her child and then she wins £5,000 on a scratch card, you could call that a miracle. But actually, the reason she values that conclusion is because of the behaviours, the situations she was in. We put things on a pedestal, we perceive them in a certain way because of where we are, but those are just our lives.
Well, if it's scratch cards, yeah, but there's amazing medical healings, and the hope that comes from this experience of faith is full-bodied, and then it stays with you the whole time.
Do you feel like hope could be a denial of something bigger?
Well, I think hope can be dangerous. Hope can be incredibly toxic. When people hope that things that are going to happen that obviously are not, they're deluding themselves. When, someone desperately hopes they're going to be a famous singer and they obviously can't sing, right? That can be a really harmful thing to a person. And so, I think the idea that hope can be a comfort blanket as well as a survival instinct, and it can be very dangerous in those forms.
What's your thoughts on that, Swarzy?
There's actually a solid hope that as a Christian, I know is going to come. And that for me makes all the difference. Through the pandemic, I was working at a different radio station, and awful things had happened during the pandemic. Lots of people come into work. And someone said to me, oh, I really wish I could hope in what you're hoping in. It would give me a lot of reason or a lot of comfort in this grieving process. She said, oh, I'm jealous of your hope. And I thought, well, why are you jealous? You could have it. Like, this hope is free for anyone to have, to believe in, because you haven't earned it. There is no rule set in to say, you must do this and this and this and this, and then the hope is given to you. It's a gift. It's a free gift of love.
Well, we've had many different opinions, many different thoughts. We've had an atheist who believes that he don't believe, and it hasn't been proven, and it's just human nature why bad and good things happen. We've had Francesca, who is more open. She has faith, but strongly believes in astrology and has done a lot of research to that. And then we have Swarzy, who is a Christian, and she believes that Jesus is the way and that he's the reason we get through suffering, and he is love. That's been Walking a Bar. Make sure you join us next time. If you've enjoyed this conversation, make sure you like and subscribe to 4A TV so you don't miss the next one.